This is Newsroom on SABC News. Hello and welcome. My name is Eben Jansen. We're broadcasting to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. The show, of course, live every day between 9 and 10 a.m. every morning. Well, we're streaming live on YouTube as we speak as well, with our entire show available on our YouTube channel all of the time. So go and have a look there. Today we look at the ongoing crisis on South Africa's Platinum Belt as workers start to return to work amid threats, intimidation and murder. Oscar's trial continues live on this channel a little bit later, and then we look at nursing in South Africa as the world celebrates Nurses' Day. But first, let's take a look at the news headlines. Police fired rubber bullets at protesters late yesterday at an informal settlement near the Lonmin mine operations at Marikana in the northwest. Community members and striking miners blockaded roads ahead of a deadline to return to work today. Anglo-American, Impala and Lonmin have directly contacted the workers to return to work or face losing their jobs. Oscar Pistorius will know this morning whether he will be sent for mental observation at a state hospital. Judge Thokozile Masipa will deliver her ruling in an application brought by the state and opposed by the defence. In international news, at least 200 miners have been killed and hundreds more remain trapped underground after an explosion at a coal mine in western Turkey. Nearly 800 miners were underground at the time of the explosion. Today, the world's third largest platinum producer, Lonmin, is anticipating a mass return of workers at its strike-hit operations. Many mine workers who've been on strike for over 15 weeks will finally return to work after Lonmin and larger rivals, Amplats and Implats, took wage offers directly to employees after talks with mine union AMCO failed. The move by employees has, however, not been without its problems, as we saw recently NUM members being killed for their choice to head back to work. AMCU President Joseph Matunjwa is expected to address a mass meeting later today. To talk to us about the situation at Lonmin and generally on the Platinum Belt, we're joined by reporter Sello Tatai, who is in Rustenburg monitoring the situation. Good morning, Sello. Just give us an update as to what's the very latest there.
Well, even today is a deadline for many mine workers, particularly those affiliated to AMCO, to heed a call by their employer and return to work. You know that just last week, Lonmin has been sending SMSs to its employees requesting them to report for duty, maintaining that if they fail to report for duty, they will have no any other option but to restructure its operations, leading to massive retrenchments. Now, last week when AMCO President Joseph Matunjwa was here, he indicated that, or he told workers to ignore those particular text messages, maintaining that Lonmin to a certain extent is being responsible and is undermining all processes aimed at finding a lasting solution here at the Platinum Belt at the operations of Lonmin. Yesterday we saw a crowd comprising of both ordinary members of the community and workers barricading the road leading to the operations of Lonmin with burning tires, tree trunks and stones. And early this morning on our way to Marikana, that situation has not changed. A heavy police contingent has been deployed here and in and around Marikana to monitor the situation and avert any form of violence that might erupt here. As I'm talking to you right now, even thousands of workers are trickling in. They are being ferried by buses to become part of a consultative meeting between their president, Joseph Matunjwa, and workers. We are expecting them to give him a fresh mandate, but it doesn't look like they will budge from their wage demand of 12,500 and heed a call to return to work as per instruction by their employer.
So what about safety? How are these workers being looked after during daytime at work? We see heavy police presence, but a lot of these killings have been happening at night. How are workers being protected at their homes? We've seen shacks being set alight and so forth. Are any measures being put in place?
Well, of interest, even just yesterday when we were at Babobamokhale Community Hall, you'll remember that Babobamokhale traditional leadership, communities such as Marikana and Papong fall under their jurisdiction. They took a resolution that no worker should be allowed to return to work starting today because Lonmin was irresponsible in instructing workers to return to work without having done a security analysis. Yesterday we saw police vehicles escorting buses ferrying workers who want to report for duty to different mining shafts. But as you've indicated, it is difficult for police to monitor some of the shenanigans that are going on at night. You'll know that 3 of the mine workers that were killed this past weekend were killed in their homes. So to a large extent, it remains critical. To a large extent, it remains to be seen, rather, whether police will manage the situation. And they have said that they can only go as far as maintaining and ensuring the safety of workers while they ferry them to their different mining shafts and operations of Lonmin, but they cannot ensure their safety at their different homes.
Tell us about the mood about amongst the workers that you've seen returning today. I see a lot of them have come in from the Eastern Cape by bus and so forth. Tell us about this, and then also, do you have any idea of what kind of deal is on the table or have Lonmin extended to these workers during this SMS campaign of theirs?
Well, starting with the latter part of your question, Eben, it doesn't look like there's going to be any deal anytime soon. The two parties are holding two different views, and they have not come to the table and resolve the impasse. Last week when we spoke, just after the elections, we spoke to the provincial chairperson of the ANC, Suprema Humapelo, who says the Provincial Executive Council of the Northwest Province, together with that of the ANC, will look into engaging the all-party stakeholders from your chieftaincy, from your Lonmin and AMCU to try and become part and parcel of the negotiations aimed at finding a lasting solution here at Marikana. The mood is vibrant here and is also tense. We've seen workers as early as 4 o'clock in the morning when we arrived here chanting struggle songs, many of them wielding knob kires, but there hasn't been any incident that's worth reporting about, particularly that has to do with violence. As I indicated, a heavy police contingent is on standby to avert and quell any form of violence that might erupt here.
And quickly, Estella, you've got 30 seconds to tell me about this threat of them losing their jobs that we see being reported. Has there been any reaction on that?
Well, it will be interesting today to see which action will be taken by Lonmin, as they've promised that and they have maintained that today is a D-Day for them to report to work. We are expecting Matundra to come here later this afternoon, later this morning, but we are also expecting Lonmin to decide whether they will continue with retrenchments or they are going to give workers more time, or they are going to allow negotiations and all these labor processes that are being intervened, or where the CCMA is intervening to find a lasting solution to this current problem, and seeing whether Lonmin will give them more time, as I indicated, and wait for these processes to come to an end and find a solution to the current labor impasse.
Sello, thank you very much for that update. That's Sello Tatai, live as always in Rustenburg, giving us the latest from the mines. Of course, can't tell you we have the head of stakeholder relations and public affairs of Lonmin here in the building. We'll try and get him on the show after a little break, but let's carry on with our show and buy a little bit of time while he's here. Just to recap that story, there's a heavy police presence in Marikana on the northwest, where striking miners are facing a deadline today to return to work or risk losing their jobs. The police fired rubber bullets at protesters at an informal settlement in that area late yesterday. 16 people were arrested after barricading the road entering Marikana with rocks and burning tyres. Anglo-American Impala and Lonmin have bypassed the AMCU union and directly appealed to workers to return to work. The miners downed tools in January to demand a 12,500 Rand basic salary. Now, I told you that's a developing story. We've got the head of stakeholder relations at Lonmin. He's I understand, in the building. We'll try and get him on the show after the break. But first, let's take a look at what you are talking about, or what you're talking about, what you're thinking about this crisis that seems to be holding South Africa ransom a little bit. This is Gary says, union bosses should also skip on getting paid when they encourage workers to continue striking. Yes, that makes sense in the real world. Resolution 1200 by 1200 says South Africa can't be held to ransom by irresponsible union leaders. The Marikana strike is robbing South African government of much-needed tax revenue. Yes, more than 20 million rand in losses have been incurred by the industry to date. Irvine says, if workers keep dying, I see AMCU losing its grip as majority union at these mines. Workers might return to the NUM. That is a legitimate threat to the AMCU union. Bring back our girls. Tall Dark Andy says, I think it's high time AMCU understand workers' problems with the strike and hunger. People do have responsibilities. That's right. They're all breadwinners, family men and women that are not being allowed to go to work. Chidi Bishop, former SABC reporter Chidi Bishop, says if workers aren't interested in returning to work, as AMCU claims, who's fighting who in Marikana? Well, that is a very, very good question. It goes at the heart of the impasse there. Before we take that break I was talking about, let's have a look at what's making headlines or what's on the front pages around the world. International New York Times, well, they're reporting on the latest on the crisis in the Ukraine. As you can expect, Russia keeps its distance after the Ukraine secession referendum. There you have the big broadsheet, as it were. That's on the front page of the International New York Times. That's the one that's available to all of us around the world. The Guardian in the UK is reporting that the International Criminal Court is set to examine claims that British troops carried out war crimes in Iraq. Why would you be surprised? Then, as we go down under, the Australian, all analysis and comment about the country's federal budget there is making the news. Also that the government is taking steps to commence the process of banning Boko Haram as a terrorist organisation. All these international morning headlines are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. Well, we're going to take a short commercial break now. Hopefully when we come back, we'll have Lonmin in studio to give us their views on this continuing impasse on the Platinum Belt. Don't go away. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
Zoom into Africa. This is Seychelles. The president is Mr. James Michel James. Seychelles got independent from United Kingdom on 29 June in 1976. The population is over 80,000 people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is the Seychelles rupee.
Welcome back to you. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Criminal law expert Tyron Maseko says the defense team of Oscar Pistorius is hoping the judge finds Pistorius guilty of culpable homicide, a verdict that suggests he made a serious mistake. Pistorius will only know today if he's to be referred to a state facility for psychiatric evaluation. This comes after the state lodged an application in the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria to get Pistorius referred for that evaluation. Yesterday, forensic psychiatrist Meryl Foster told the court that Pistorius suffers from a general anxiety disorder. Judge Thokozile Masipa will pronounce on the matter after studying arguments from both the defense and the prosecution at about 9:30 this morning. But for the very latest, Griselda Lewis is always outside the North Gauteng High Court, bringing us the latest and giving us always a little bit of an insight. Good morning, Griselda.
Very good morning to you, Eben.
General anxiety disorder, Griselda. That's very interesting. Isn't that something that the whole of South Africa suffers from?
Well, yeah, but in my questions to some of the clinical psychologists that we've spoken to, they say it certainly is a common condition. And if you look at it in South Africa's context, South Africans are very stressed. So certainly, there's a lot that we have to deal with in terms of work, in terms of our private lives. So certainly something that is common in South Africa. In particular, these clinical psychologists are saying South Africa is a very stressed nation. So, that's what they're saying. Oscar Pistorius is suffering from at this stage. You would know that that has been the diagnosis of the psychiatrist, Dr. Foster, who said that Oscar Pistorius' condition continued to escalate from when he was a child, when he lost his legs, and that further exacerbated when he lost his mother and had an estranged relationship with his father, to the point to where we are at this stage, Eben.
Now, this morning, Griselda, just about 20 minutes' time, I think Judge Masipa will come out and rule on this evaluation that needs to take place. What is your expectation? An adjournment straight after? How do you think it will proceed this morning?
Well, even experts are really terming today as one of the most important days in this trial, where we'll really get to see which direction we're going to take in the Oscar Pistorius murder trial, in the sense that when Judge Thokozile Masipa gives that decision on whether Oscar Pistorius will have to be referred to a mental institution for 30 days, it will indicate or give us a much clearer idea of what Oscar Pistorius' state of mind is. Now, this all started, as I said earlier, with the testimony of the psychiatrist, and basically the state is saying that in order for this case to proceed and for us to reach a finality in a proper manner, we would need to determine very crucially Oscar Pistorius' state of mind. And the state claims that the only way that is going to be done is if Oscar Pistorius is evaluated, and also the state questioning the timing of the testimony given by the psychiatrist, saying that perhaps is it damage control after Oscar Pistorius gave such a poor showing on the stand to now insinuate that Oscar Pistorius, as a result of this condition, acted differently on that morning to any normal person when he shot and killed Reeva Steenkamp. But we saw yesterday as well the defense really saying that it's not necessary for Oscar Pistorius to be admitted to a psychiatric facility to undergo these psychometric tests, saying that that has never been their case, that Oscar Pistorius is unfit to stand trial, and that some of the issues that the state brought to the table relating to other instances where accused persons have previously been referred to psychiatric facilities, that has absolutely nothing to do with Oscar Pistorius' case, in that Oscar Pistorius' case is quite different. So really what we're expecting that decision this morning to do is to really give a direction on whether this case will be adjourned again for the next 30 days or whether we will proceed as expected previously, that the case was supposed to come to an end this week.
And quickly, Griselda, you got about 45 seconds to tell us about yesterday. The consensus is that Gerwinal really took Merrill Foster apart, isn't it?
Well, that is the sense, and basically saying that he asked Merrill Foster, why would she then draw to the conclusion of somebody who has an anxiety disorder if Oscar Pistorius, as we now know, for example, slept with the balcony door open in his home? If somebody has such a severe condition, such as anxiety disorder, Oscar Pistorius then, if he has such a fear of crime, as we've heard in the testimony of Dr. Merrill Foster, why would Oscar Pistorius sleep with the balcony door open? One of the other pertinent issues is that Oscar Pistorius' window downstairs had been broken for some time, and we heard that Oscar Pistorius didn't bother to fix it, and also left a ladder lingering around on the outside of his, just on the outside of his home. So taking into light all those issues and many others, of course, if somebody has an anxiety disorder, the first thing you'd want to do before you go to bed is make sure that your door is locked. You would not leave a ladder lingering around outside for somebody to gain access to your home, and if there's a broken window, you certainly want to repair it if you're so fearful of crime in South Africa. Those are just some of the issues that Gerrie now really put to Meryl Foster yesterday, saying if she draws to those conclusions, is she able to explain then why all these steps were not taken by Oscar Pistorius? So certainly torn apart with all that year's experience that we've seen Meryl Foster has.
Thank you very much, Griselda. I think the entire country is looking forward to this ruling this morning. Thank you for that update. Griselda Lewis, as always, doing the business outside the North Gauteng High Court. Just to recap that story, Oscar Pistorius will know his fate this morning, whether he'll be sent for mental observation at a state hospital. Judge Thokozile Masiba will deliver a ruling in an application brought by the state.
Psychiatrist Meryl Foster insists Pistorius suffers from an anxiety disorder and that this could have played a part in the Reeva Steenkamp shooting.
The GAD being a psychiatric disorder, what you're saying is that the psychiatric disorder played a role?
Yes.
May have played a role.
May have played a role.
Yeah.
And that was enough for the state to launch an application to have Pistorius mentally evaluated.
A psychiatric factor or psychiatric disorder may have played a role. If that is so, my lady, it's a matter to be referred for the court also to gain the views of experts.
The defence argued there's no basis for the application.
A, the state is wrong with respect, but telling you must only be an indication. B, the state is wrong by relying on these cases because each case has a history crying out for referral. C, the factual basis does not support the state, and it's just a ruse with respect in order to get a second opinion.
It's a much-awaited decision by Judge Masipa, one that will determine the direction this trial will take. Griselda Lewis, SABC News, at the North Gauteng High Court.
Of course, that ruling is on this channel in about 10 minutes' time, and we'll go straight into the court when that happens. But let's look back at our top story. Of course, a little bit earlier we were talking about the crisis, or the continuing crisis on the Platinum Belt here in South Africa. Joining us in the studio is the head of stakeholder relations and public affairs of Lonmin, Mr. Happy Nkoma. Thank you, sir. Thank you for making it this morning.
Thank you, and good morning. On an important morning for us as well.
Yes, an important morning, deadline day as it were. Just give us your reaction to what's happening, and also tell us what you guys are doing to secure the safety of workers as they return to work.
I still say that it is actually very sad that 20 years after democracy, when workers have already thought they've got rights, when we talk about workers and employment and labor issues, we then have to talk about violence and security, because it means other workers' rights are actually not being respected. So it is a very sad day when you look at it. And what we are really doing today is we've decided, let's give the workers a chance to come to work. It's been 4 months, they've been without income, and we're also losing money. So it's time that something gets done. So the workers who actually would like to come to work, and there's an overwhelming number that says to us, we want to come to work. And we are giving them a chance to come to work today. And on our premises, we've actually stepped up security, the security forces as well, in the residential areas in the community around have been there. They are visible. The commitment made by the minister day before yesterday, he has honoured it, and there's visibility. And we're actually seeing workers coming to work today.
The one concern that's been raised so far is that a lot of the attacks, the burning of shacks and this sort of thing happens at night. How do you secure people's safety at night then?
That is why that is a prerogative mainly of the state, because that happens in the residential areas. And this is actually calls for police to make sure that that happens. And the police have been there in higher numbers. And we haven't received any reports of anything happening last night. There has been a lot of skirmishes and people trying to intimidate others. But short of that, we have not seen no crime really being committed.
Just give us the broad strokes. How many workers are returning to work in your estimation? And then also tell us about the negotiations that you've been doing in your SMS campaign, as it's now known, with workers. What's on the table? What's being discussed?
Okay, it's difficult right now. It's too early in the morning. I'm not at the shaft. I'm here. We're still looking at the numbers that are coming in. We're talking about 7 shafts that we've got. Yeah. So we need the greater part of the day to really work out how many workers will have returned. But safe to say that despite the intimidation, people have already been committed to coming to work. And we're not saying people must actually risk their lives to do so, but they must do so because we have received. What has happened with the SMSs is that all the SMSs we have sent, people have come in majority numbers. The majority of those that came back to us said, no, we are happy with the offer, pardon the pun, and we would like to come back to work. Yeah. The offer that is on the table is we are offering the union that we will give, we'll reach the increase of 12,500 by 2017. Actually, at Lonmin, we'll reach that next year. Yeah. So that's the offer that's on the table, and the union has said to us it has been rejected. But then the workers that we are talking to directly are telling us something different. So we would like to sit to the union and talk and say, what do we do with these numbers? So we have not ruled out negotiations. We are not overriding the union. We're just saying we wanted to test for ourselves with our employees, because at the end of the day, the union is actually a representative of the employees. They are not the ones.
Have you contacted the union for these discussions? Because it's a very fractious and dangerous situation that we find ourselves in on the Platinum Belt right now.
Well, we have said, it's one thing for workers to say want to come to work. Let them show us that they want to come to work. And that's what they're doing today. And on the basis of that, we will then sit back with the union and talk. We have not ruled that out. But again, we cannot talk with people who are trying to bully us into a corner. They have not moved. We've moved so many times since the year started, and they have not done it.
And the shafts that the workers return to, you want to operate them as normal today, at full capacity or close to that?
Well, remember that opening a shaft is not as easy, and I'm sorry to say it's a sad day for mining. In Tegi, we have lost about 200 miners, and we send our condolences to them. It is opening a shaft is not a question of just going downstairs and getting people to work. Yeah. There's a whole process. You've got to put everybody through medical tests, fitness tests, then we take them through safety training. So those who are reporting for work today are not necessarily going to start mining. They're going to go through the induction process.
Finally, I want to ask you, those who do not return to work today, are they going to lose their jobs, as we've heard?
What you have heard is that if this thing of people not working will continue, restructuring is obviously will be on the cards. We can't lose money forever. But today we are not actually coming and threatening anybody. We are saying to people, come to work. Once we have come to work, let's decide how we're moving forward.
Well, we hope that you find the right balance in resolutions. Thank you, though, for joining us. I know that there's so much going on at the moment, but you guys have come through to the studio and put your case forward. Thank you once again. That was from, Head of Stakeholder Relations and Public Affairs, Mr. Happy Nkomo. Thank you once again for joining us this morning. Now we continue, of course, this week around the world celebrated Nurses' Day to mark the contributions nurses make to society in general. 12 May was chosen to celebrate the day as it's the anniversary of the birth of Florence Nightingale. Remember her? Who's widely considered the founder of modern nursing. The challenges that nurses in South Africa face on a daily basis cannot be downplayed or ignored. Being a nurse means being faced with a constant inundation of patients, as many as 500 per day, in hospitals that are very understaffed at times. Sponganiseni Delihlazo, the communication manager of the Democratic Nursing Organisation of South Africa, DENOSA, joins us from Pretoria. Good morning to you, sir, and happy Nurses' Day.
Good morning, Eben, and to the viewers, and indeed, happy Nurses' Day.
Do our nurses have a reason to celebrate with the rest of the world today, or are they rather sad?
Well, absolutely. They do have a reason to celebrate. I mean, nurses are in the business of saving lives, and certainly they have done a splendid job in as far as saving lives. Of course, in spite of the conditions under which they work, which you've mentioned, but certainly they have every reason to celebrate this day.
Just give us a quick rundown of a day in the life of a nurse in South Africa, if you don't mind.
Well, of course, nurses are very passionate about their job, but I think it's worth to note that nurses are actually workers. Nurses are workers, most of whom work 12 hours a day, specifically those who are in hospitals and community health centers. So they would knock in at 7 o'clock in the morning and knock off at 7 o'clock in the evening. So they work for 12 hours. For 12 hours, they are in a facility doing hard work and saving lives. But of course, that comes with its own challenges. As you mentioned, that most of nurses in our facilities, they work in under short-staffed conditions, and that really impacts negatively on the quality of service that they do provide. And to the extent, it also demotivates nurses, and therefore the passion would somewhat dwindle as a result of the conditions under which they work. And certainly, if we believe that if the focus would really be put in making sure that the conditions under which nurses work is a motivating one and a very conducive one, certainly the results that we've started to see, such as the 5-year increase in the life expectancy rate in the country, we could do much more improvement, and the results would certainly be tangible.
The public protector last year visited a number of hospitals and found horrible conditions, neglect, health workers not being motivated, the heavy workload, and generally found conditions at some hospitals not to be conducive to health. What are you guys doing to deal with this report from the public protector and to improve conditions?
Well, certainly we were quite thankful with the work that the public protector did, in as far as paying, unnoticed visits in our facilities. But in as far as nurses, we are embarking on a campaign called Positive Practice Environments, PPE, in collaboration with South African Medical Association, being the association for doctors in the country, whereby health professionals, who actually are the ones who are experiencing these negative conditions in the workplace, they are saying, let us come together and actually articulate the real conditions under which nurses and doctors work, which in the end would actually have a very negative, effect of their work. As I mentioned earlier on, that nurses and doctors are slowly becoming demotivated, because if you work in an environment where there are not enough nurses and where there are not enough doctors, then certainly the expectation would be a miracle for one to be able to save lives. And certainly the campaign is to try to say, let us look into the conditions where nurses work and doctors where they work, to ensure that there are enough resources in our facilities, to ensure that there is enough equipment, enough supply of medication, and timeous payment of health workers, because all these, they actually contribute towards the motivating workers in the healthcare facilities. But of course, nurses and doctors in this case tend to pay the price as a result of the conditions that they work under, which we feel is a bit unfortunate. But of course, we understand in the case of nurses that nurses are the face of a healthcare system, because nurses are by far the majority health professionals in a healthcare system anywhere else in the world. So we really, it's a call to say, let us first fix the conditions, where nurses and doctors work. Yeah. That in itself will result in the positive outcomes in as far as the quality of service, that they render to communities. But just also, Eben, just to add, on the research that was done, for instance, in the U.S., in the state of California, where nurses actually called for what we call a nurse-to-patient ratio, for the lowering of nurse-to-patient ratio, whereby research found that in an environment where there are enough nurses in a facility, the time it takes for patients to recover fully and be discharged is much shorter than in an environment where there are few nurses, because nurses don't put much focus and don't spend time and enough quality time on each and every patient. Most nurses are on the run in healthcare facilities, not able to give real attention to the most critical patients, and even if they do, that will be done at the expense of looking at other patients as well. So by looking into this matter, certainly it will result in the quality of service that nurses as health professionals do provide to our communities. And certainly it will obviously ease the pressure that currently they feel at the moment, whereby communities are increasingly of the view that nurses are just lazy people, because there are long queues in our health facilities. It's because nurses are lazy. It's certainly not the point. It's actually the fact that there are not enough nurses to look after patients. And certainly, as I mentioned, Eben, I may take a bit of your time. As I mentioned that nurses are workers. But under an environment that they work in at the moment, it is not expected of them to actually be operating as workers. Yeah. I mean, to knock in at 7 o'clock and knock off at 7 p.m. For 12 hours and not be expected to at least take breaks in terms of having lunch so that you can re-energize and be able to look after patients. It has almost become a taboo for nurses to actually take lunch.
I have to stop you there, unfortunately. Thank you for joining us. Happy Nurses Day, and I hope that the problems get sorted. I'm a bit worried sometimes that we talk about a shortage of nurses when we have such high employment in South Africa. That is Sibongiseni Delihlazo, who is the communication manager of the Democratic Nurses Union here in South Africa, joined us live from Pretoria. Let's take a look at what you are talking about on social media. Of course, we love your pictures. You know, they add so much to our shows. When you send pictures from wherever you are, we put them up. Let's have a look at some of your comments now. What's the... Criselda Lewis. Okay, yeah, we have some info coming to you from the court. State and Defence now meeting with Masipa before court starts. Just to tell you, that's why we are running a little bit behind schedule there. Of course, Criselda continues. She says, this is a very big day for Oscar Pistorius murder trial. Judge Thokozile Masipa will make a decision on the accused's mental evaluation a little bit later. Martz is saying, if Oscar Pistorius goes to a mental facility, can they install CCTV and give us a Big Brother deal? 30 days is too long. No, my dear, you're going to have to get used to life without the Oscar trial. Daryl Colley says, Turkey miners, let's hope they get more out alive. Yes, there's still hundreds missing. Of course, there we have a wonderful picture of that rescue operation that's underway in Turkey, where more than 200 miners lost their lives after an explosion underground there. We'll keep you updated as that story develops right here on SABC News. You can watch all of our other shows, AM News and the like. If you want more information, you can go to our Facebook page, SABC Newsroom. More on the hundreds of striking Lonmin platinum mine workers in Rustenburg is expected to report for duty this morning. We'll have blanket coverage on that. Then also the latest on the Oscar Pistorius and other high-profile cases here in South Africa. There's the Kretcher case, there's the Divani case, there's the Kimberley case of the boy murdering the family. More is always available on our Facebook page if you want a little bit more detail. Today in history, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, the ANC activist and later president of the ANC Women's League, was sentenced to 6 years for the kidnapping and beating of 4 youths. One of those youths, 14-year-old Stompie Sepe, was found dead from his injuries nearby the crime scene. Mandela's lawyer appealed against the court verdict, and the sentence was later suspended by the appeal court. In 1997, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission reached a verdict that Madikizela Mandela was guilty and had played a role in the killing of Stompie Sepe.
I intend to testify before the TRC. I intend to bear my soul to the scrutiny of my country. I beg that it be done in public. I beg that these issues be tested by the vigilance of the public. Let this serve as a public spectacle of the last kind. Let me claim the right to decent treatment once and for all.
Yeah, that's SABC News. We can never forget what happened before so that we can continue on our journey as South Africans. And, well, we're going to take a short break. The Oscar trial is still in chambers with Judge Masipa. It seems as if there's going to be a longer than usual discussion, so we'll keep it going. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll hopefully be right in the middle of Judge Masipa's judgment on the mental evaluation of Oscar Pistorius. Don't go away.
World provides trusted world, continent and local stories. We deliver breaking news from across the globe and information on the latest top stories on business, technology, politics and sport. Analysis of the big global business and economic issues as they affect consumers and investors. Make sure you don't miss Your World, weekdays between 11 and 12 midnight. We keep the nation fully informed.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom. We're waiting for court to get underway. Judge Masipa right now are still in chambers with Barry Roo and Gerrie Nel as they try and iron out a decision and a deal around the mental evaluation of Oscar Pistorius. That is going on right now. We're waiting for proceedings to get underway. We'll go there once it starts. But let's now take a look at the top stories on SABC News right now. Police fired rubber bullets at protesters late yesterday at an informal settlement near the Lonmin mine operations at Marikana in the northwest. Community members and striking miners have blockaded roads ahead of a deadline to return to work today. Anglo American, Impala and Lonmin have directly contacted the workers to return to work or face losing their jobs. Oscar Pistorius will know this morning whether he will be sent for mental observation at a state hospital. Judge Thokozile Masipa will deliver her ruling in an application brought by the state and is posed by the defence. In international news, at least 200 miners have been killed and hundreds more remain trapped underground after an explosion at a coal mine in western Turkey. Nearly 800 miners were underground at the time of that explosion. As I said a little bit earlier, we're waiting for Judge Masipa to come out of chambers this morning and give us her judgment on the mental state and the mental evaluation of Oscar Pistorius. While we wait for that, let's look more at what you've been talking about around the Oscar trial. Of course, at SABC Newsroom is where you can send your tweets. Clarissa, well, it's not talking about Oscar today. Clarissa Dane says, prayers for Turkey miners, collapse prayers for Turkey. Yes, the world's attention is on Turkey, as Mustafa points out there. 200 dead and hundreds more injured in this horrific coal mining accident in Turkey. Prayers go out to the victims and their families. And yes, that is the sentiments of an entire planet today. Raiz Muhammad says, strength to the people of Turkey. May Allah bring those miners out safely. Inshallah, Ameen. God willing, he says. Jeannie Hartley says, terrible tragedy in Turkey. Soma mine, 201 dead so far. Sending deepest condolences, love and prayers to the miners and their families there. Thank you, Jeannie. That's a sentiment that we can send all around the world. We're still waiting for court to get underway. It's 9:45 a.m. You're watching SABC News. Let's take a look now at some of the other top stories. In another high-profile case, the trial of Czech fugitive Radovan Krejcir and 5 others will continue in the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court in Gauteng today. Boksburg businessman Paul Vusi Msimango is expected to continue with his testimony. The state witness has already detailed how Krejcir and his co-accused kidnapped and tortured Becky Lukele after a failed drug deal last year.
I was arrested for being in possession of vanadium.
It's going to be a cold winter. Brace yourselves for load shedding this winter. Eskom says its power supply is under huge pressure.
A winter's tale with no happy ending. Power cuts and blackouts are in the script.
The system is very tight. Until at least 2 units of the new bill come online, the system will remain tight. So we're very, very dependent and working very hard to make sure that 2 units of Medupi come on stream, which will give us some relief.
The Medupi power station has been beset by strikes. The R105 billion coal-fired station was due to go online last year. A series of strikes by its casual labour force delayed it. Once fully online, it will generate 4,800 megawatts of power. This week, the 14th annual African Utility Week conference gets underway. It will focus on finding solutions to Africa's energy challenges. Vanessa Puna, SABC News, Cape Town.
The International Criminal Court has dismissed accusations of an African bias. ICC prosecutor Fatu Bensouda says criticism of the court comes from a lack of understanding of how the ICC works and active propaganda against it. She was addressing the media in New York after updating the Security Council on her work in Libya.
There is no doubt that... Standing firm, she again took the position that criticism was wrong and that most cases referred to her office were by African governments themselves.
Even those cases that came to the ICC from the UN Security Council, you had African states sitting at the council and voting for that case, those cases, Libya and the Sudan, to be referred to the ICC. So I think it's not justifiable to say that ICC is only going after Africa.
She said that despite political decisions taken by the African Union, specifically regarding the trials against Kenya's leadership, their position is that the law must take its course.
It's a mixed bag of lack of understanding the court, not knowing how the court works, and also there is active propaganda against the court by some non-member states even some member states recently against the ICC.
Prosecutor Bensouda told us the trial against Kenya's Vice President William Ruto was proceeding despite witnesses no longer wanting to come forward or changing their minds about testifying. She says she's brought a non-compliance filing before the chamber in that regard. The trial of President Uhuru Kenyatta has been set down to proceed in October. Shervin Bryceby's SABC News, New York.
Let's just look at our top international story right now. At least 200 miners have been killed and hundreds more remain trapped underground after an explosion in a coal mine in western Turkey. Nearly 800 miners were underground at the time of the explosion. Rescuers worked through the night to bring over 300 survivors to the surface. The explosion was believed to have been triggered by a faulty electrical transformer. Fire officials are trying to pump clean air into the mine shaft for those who remain trapped some 2 kilometers below the surface. While we're waiting for the trial to get underway, that's the Oscar Pistorius murder trial at the North Gauteng High Court. What I can tell you right now is that Judge Masipa is still in chambers. They're busy discussing the merits, I would think, of, an application to have Oscar Pistorius sent for mental observation for the next 30 days. Let's have a look at who's tweeting live inside the court at the moment. Andrew Harding is a BBC man. He says, Rue and Oscar Pistorius confer earnestly again. I wish I could lip read, says Andrew Harding. Michelle Limburus says, dying to know what Judge Masipa will rule with regards to Oscar Pistorius being referred for psychiatric observation. Nastasha Tay says, a quiet chat between Rue and Oscar Pistorius. Rue looks grim. Pistorius resigned. That is live tweets coming out of the court. Of course, our very own Griselda Lewis on the beat as always. Pistorius, will Oscar Pistorius be admitted to a psychiatric facility? We will find out in a few minutes' time. That is, of course, if Judge Masipa makes it out of the court in time. But here at Newsroom, we've run out of time this morning. Hopefully, our colleagues will follow on and we'll go live into the court within the next couple of minutes. This show, of course, broadcasts live to you from our studios here in Auckland Park in Johannesburg in South Africa. We stream live on YouTube every day. You can watch the whole show on our YouTube channel at your leisure, at the office or at your house all of the time. This is Newsroom. You've been watching SABC News. We love it in the morning.